November 1990. Jhon Jairo Arias García stood outside a restaurant in Medellin, scanning the street with the trained eyes of a man who'd spent 5 years keeping Pablo Escobar alive. Every car that passed, every person on the sidewalk, every window that overlooked the entrance. Jhon was 28 years old and had been Pablo's personal bodyguard since 1985. In those 5 years, he'd taken 3 minor injuries protecting his boss: a knife wound in 1986, a broken arm in 1988 when he tackled Pablo out of the way of a car bomb, bruised ribs in 1989 from a fistfight with rival cartel members. But he'd never taken a bullet, never had to make the ultimate sacrifice that every bodyguard knows might be required. That changed on November 15th, 1990, in a split second that would define the rest of his life and reveal a truth about Pablo Escobar that would haunt everyone who heard it. That loyalty to Pablo was only valuable as long as you could still be useful. To understand what happened that day, you need to understand who Jhon was and why he was willing to die for Pablo Escobar. Jhon grew up in the comunas of Medellin, the slums that clung to the mountainsides surrounding the city like barnacles on a ship. Extreme poverty wasn't just a condition in the comunas. It was the air you breathed, the reality that shaped every decision, every dream, every possibility. No father in the picture. His mother, Rosa, worked 3 jobs to feed 4 children, coming home exhausted every night, her hands raw from cleaning houses, washing clothes, doing whatever work she could find. Jhon was the oldest. That meant he carried responsibility from the moment he could walk. Had to be the man of the house at an age when most kids were playing soccer in the streets. Jhon dropped out of school at 12 to work, doing whatever jobs he could find that would pay a few pesos. Construction sites where he carried bricks in the scorching sun. Delivery routes where he ran packages across the city for tips. Street vending where he sold cigarettes and candy to passers-by. Anything to bring money home to his mother, to help feed his younger siblings, to contribute to a family that was always one missed payment away from homelessness. By 15, he was running with local gangs, doing small crimes that paid better than honest work, stealing car radios, breaking into warehouses, running drugs for local dealers, heading down the same path as thousands of other young men in Medellin who saw crime as the only escape from poverty, the only way to have money, respect, power. But Jhon was different in one crucial way that would define his entire life. He was loyal. Absolutely, unquestioningly, almost pathologically loyal to anyone who earned his trust. When he joined a gang, he never betrayed them, never talked to police, never stole from his own crew. When he made a promise, he kept it no matter the cost. When he gave his word, it was iron, unbreakable, sacred. In a world of betrayal and shifting allegiances, where people switch sides for money or survival, Jhon's loyalty was rare, valuable, and that loyalty, that almost naive devotion to keeping his word, caught the attention of Pablo Escobar's recruiters, who were always looking for young men with specific qualities. In 1985, when Jhon was 23, he was offered a job that would change his life: personal bodyguard to Pablo Escobar himself. The pay was extraordinary, almost obscene. $10,000 a month, more money than Jhon had ever imagined, more than his mother made in 5 years of backbreaking work. But more than the money, it was the respect, the status, the feeling that he mattered, that he was protecting someone important, someone powerful, that his life had purpose beyond just survival and scraping by. Jhon took the job without hesitation and became one of Pablo's inner circle of bodyguards, the elite team of men who surrounded him constantly, who slept in shifts outside his bedroom door, who tasted his food before he ate it to check for poison, who drove ahead of his car to check for ambushes, who put their bodies between Pablo and any threat. And Jhon was good at it, observant, quick, fearless, but most importantly, he was loyal. Pablo tested that loyalty constantly, the way he tested everyone around him. Asked Jhon to do things that had nothing to do with security, deliver messages, pick up packages, sometimes just sit in a room for hours doing nothing, just to see if Jhon would complain. Jhon never did, never questioned, never hesitated. And Pablo noticed, started trusting Jhon more than the other bodyguards, started keeping him closer, started treating him almost like family, the way Pablo treated the few people he truly trusted. By 1990, Jhon had been with Pablo for 5 years, had saved his life multiple times, had proven his loyalty over and over, had become one of the people Pablo relied on most. And Jhon loved Pablo for it. Not romantic love, but the kind of loyalty and devotion that soldiers feel for commanders who've earned their respect. Pablo had given Jhon a life, a purpose, a family, had paid for Jhon's mother's medical treatments when she got sick, had helped Jhon's younger brother get a job, had treated Jhon with respect and appreciation, and Jhon would have done anything for him, would have killed for him, would have died for him. And on November 15th, 1990, he almost did. Pablo was meeting with some associates at a restaurant in El Poblado, one of the nicer neighborhoods in Medellin, a place where wealthy people dined and felt safe. It was supposed to be a secure location, neutral territory, a place where business could be conducted without violence. No one knew about the meeting except Pablo's inner circle, just 6 people who'd been told the location and time. But someone had talked. Someone always talked. Money, fear, revenge. There were 1,000 reasons people betrayed Pablo Escobar. The Cali Cartel, Pablo's biggest rivals, had sent 2 sicarios, professional killers with dozens of successful hits between them, to assassinate Pablo. They'd been waiting across the street for 2 hours, sitting in a parked car, watching the restaurant entrance through tinted windows, waiting for the perfect moment when Pablo would be exposed and vulnerable. Jhon was standing outside the restaurant entrance, his back to the wall, positioned so he could see the entire street in both directions, his eyes constantly moving, scanning for threats the way he'd been trained, looking for anything unusual, any car that stayed too long, any person who looked out of place, any movement that didn't fit the normal rhythm of the street. Pablo was inside, finishing his meeting, about to leave. Jhon had already checked the car, had already scanned the route they'd take back to the safe house. Everything seemed normal, but Jhon had learned over 5 years that normal was when you were most vulnerable, when you let your guard down, when death came. The sicarios made their move at exactly 3:47 p.m. They got out of their car simultaneously, moving with the practiced coordination of men who'd done this many times before. They crossed the street quickly but not running, not drawing attention, just 2 men walking with purpose. But Jhon saw them immediately, saw the way they moved. Too focused, too deliberate, saw their hands reaching into their jackets in perfect synchronization, saw the intent in their eyes, that cold focus that only comes when you're about to kill someone. And in that split second, Jhon's training kicked in. His mind processed the threat in milliseconds. 2 shooters, both armed, both targeting the restaurant end. Pablo was about to walk out. Jhon had maybe 3 seconds to react. He could shout a warning and dive for cover, get Pablo back inside, call for backup, could pull his own weapon and try to shoot first, try to take down both sicarios before they fired, could do a dozen different things that might have saved his own life while still protecting Pablo. But his training, his loyalty, his 5 years of conditioning, all of it overrode rational thought. He didn't think. He just moved. Because that's what bodyguards do. That's what he'd been trained to do. Put your body between the principle and the threat. Always. No matter what. Pablo stepped out of the restaurant at exactly the wrong moment, laughing at something one of his associates had said, completely unaware of the danger. The sicarios pulled their guns, 9mm pistols, suppressors attached. Professional equipment, professional killers. Jhon saw it happening in slow motion, the way people describe near-death experiences. Saw the guns coming up, saw them aiming at Pablo's chest, saw Pablo's face, still smiling, still unaware. And Jhon did what every bodyguard is trained to do, but hopes they'll never have to do. He threw himself in front of Pablo Escobar, put his body between his boss and the bullets, became a human shield, made himself a target. The first bullet hit Jhon in the chest. The second hit his shoulder. The third hit his spine. 3 shots in less than 2 seconds. Jhon went down hard, his body crumpling to the pavement. The other bodyguards returned fire immediately, killing both sicarios before they could shoot again. Pablo was untouched, unharmed, alive because Jhon had taken 3 bullets meant for him. Jhon lay on the ground, unable to move, unable to feel his legs, blood pooling beneath him. He could hear shouting, could hear Pablo's voice giving orders, could hear sirens in the distance. And through the pain and the shock, Jhon felt something that surprised him, pride. He'd done his job. He'd saved Pablo's life. He'd proven his loyalty in the most absolute way possible. He'd taken bullets for his boss, for the man he devoted 5 years of his life to protecting. And as the world went dark and Jhon lost consciousness, his last thought was that Pablo would take care of him, would make sure he was okay, would reward his sacrifice, because that's what loyalty meant. That's what family meant. Jhon woke up 3 days later in a private hospital, the best hospital in Medellin, paid for by Pablo Escobar. The doctors had saved his life, but the news was devastating. The bullet that hit his spine had severed his spinal cord. Jhon was paralyzed from the waist down, would never walk again, would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. At 28 years old, his body was broken, but Jhon told himself it was worth it. He'd saved Pablo's life. That meant something. That had to mean something. The other bodyguards visited him over the next few days, brought flowers, brought magazines, told him he was a hero, a legend, that everyone in the organization was talking about his sacrifice. Said Pablo was grateful, that Pablo was planning something special to thank him, that Jhon would be taken care of for life, that he'd never have to worry about money again. And Jhon believed them, believed that his sacrifice would be honored, would be rewarded, believed that Pablo, the man he'd been loyal to for 5 years, the man he'd literally taken bullets for, the man who treated him like family, would show him the same loyalty in return, would take care of him the way Jhon had taken care of Pablo. Pablo visited on the 4th day. Jhon's heart lifted when he saw his boss walk into the hospital room. Despite the pain, despite the paralysis, despite everything, seeing Pablo made him feel like it had all been worth it. Pablo looked serious, concerned, his face showing what Jhon interpreted as worry and gratitude. He pulled up a chair next to Jhon's bed slowly, deliberately, asked how he was feeling, his voice neutral, giving nothing away. Jhon, still weak from surgery, still in pain from the bullets they'd removed from his body, still processing the reality that he'd never walk again, managed to smile through the agony and say he was okay. Said he was just glad Pablo was safe, that the bullets had hit him instead of the Patron. Said he'd do it again without hesitation, that protecting Pablo was his job, his purpose, his honor. And then Jhon waited for Pablo to say what he expected to hear, what he needed to hear, that Jhon was a hero, that he'd be taken care of for life, that his family would never want for anything, that his sacrifice meant everything, that Pablo would never forget what Jhon had done. But Pablo didn't say any of that. Instead, Pablo's face hardened. The concern disappeared. His voice went cold, emotionless, businesslike, and he said something that shattered Jhon's world more completely than the bullets had shattered his spine, more thoroughly than paralysis had destroyed his body. "Jhon, you're no longer useful to me." 5 words, delivered without emotion, without sympathy, without any acknowledgement of what Jhon had just sacrificed, of the 3 bullets he'd taken, of the 5 years of loyal service, of the fact that he was paralyzed because he'd put his body between Pablo and death. Jhon stared at Pablo, unable to process what he was hearing. His mind refused to accept it, thought maybe he'd misunderstood. Maybe the pain medication was making him confused, making him hear things wrong. But Pablo kept talking, and every word was like another bullet, each one hitting harder than the last, each one destroying another piece of Jhon's soul. "You can't walk. You can't protect me. You can't do your job anymore. I pay you to keep me safe, and you can't do that from a wheelchair. So I'm letting you go. Your salary ends today. The hospital bill is paid. I'll cover that. But after you leave here, after you're discharged, you're on your own. I've already hired your replacement, a younger guy, faster, someone who can actually do the job." Jhon felt tears streaming down his face, hot and shameful, not from physical pain, though that was excruciating, from emotional devastation of understanding that everything he believed about loyalty, about family, about Pablo Escobar was a lie. A complete, total, devastating lie. "But Patron," Jhon managed to say, his voice breaking, cracking with emotion, "I took those bullets for you. I saved your life. I gave everything for you. My legs, my future, everything." Pablo stood up, looked down at Jhon with eyes that held no warmth, no gratitude, no recognition of sacrifice. "And I appreciate that. I really do. But appreciation doesn't change the fact that you're useless to me now. I need bodyguards who can walk, who can fight, who can protect me. You can't do any of that. So this is goodbye. I wish you luck." And Pablo walked out, didn't look back, didn't offer any help, didn't provide any compensation beyond the hospital bill, just left Jhon lying there, paralyzed, abandoned, destroyed. The other bodyguards stopped visiting after that, stopped calling, stopped acknowledging Jhon existed. Because in Pablo's organization, if Pablo discarded you, everyone else did too. Loyalty only flowed one direction, toward Pablo, never from him. Jhon spent 2 more weeks in that hospital, alone, completely alone, processing what had happened, processing the fact that he'd sacrificed his body, his future, his ability to walk his entire life for a man who saw him as nothing more than a tool that broke and was therefore discarded without a second thought. No different than a gun that jammed, or a car that stopped running, or a phone that died. Useful until it wasn't, valuable until it broke, then worthless, then garbage, then forgotten. When Jhon was finally released from the hospital, he had nowhere to go. His mother couldn't care for him. She was old, sick, living in a tiny apartment in the comunas with no wheelchair access, barely able to take care of herself. Jhon's savings were gone, spent on things he couldn't even remember now, wasted on the life he'd lived before the bullets. Pablo had paid the hospital bill, but nothing else. No severance pay, no pension, no compensation for 5 years of loyal service and 3 bullets taken. No acknowledgement that Jhon had literally saved his life. Nothing. Just a hospital bill paid and a cold goodbye. Jhon ended up in a government facility for disabled people. A grim, understaffed place where people went to be forgotten by society, by their families, by everyone. He spent his days in a wheelchair, staring at walls, replaying that moment over and over in his mind like a broken record. The moment he threw himself in front of Pablo. The moment he chose loyalty over self-preservation. The moment he made the biggest mistake of his life. Because he believed that loyalty was a two-way street. That if he was loyal to Pablo, Pablo would be loyal to him. That sacrifice would be honored. That family meant something. But he'd been wrong. Catastrophically, devastatingly, completely wrong. Other former cartel members who ended up in that facility told Jhon he should have known better. That everyone knew Pablo only cared about people as long as they were useful. That loyalty to Pablo was something he demanded but never gave. That the only people Pablo truly cared about were his immediate family. And even then, only sometimes. But Jhon hadn't known, hadn't wanted to believe it, had thought he was different, special, part of Pablo's inner circle, part of the family. He wasn't. He was just an employee. And when employees break, you replace them. Jhon lived in that facility for 3 years. 3 years of bitterness and regret and rage. 3 years of watching other people walk while he sat in a wheelchair. 3 years of thinking about Pablo Escobar living in luxury while Jhon rotted in a government facility. And then, in 1993, Jhon heard the news that Pablo Escobar had been killed, shot on a rooftop in Medellin, dead at 44. Everyone expected Jhon to celebrate, to feel vindicated, to feel like justice had been served. But Jhon felt nothing, just emptiness, because Pablo's death didn't give Jhon his legs back, didn't undo the sacrifice, didn't change the fact that Jhon had given everything for a man who gave him nothing in return. Pablo was dead, but Jhon was still in a wheelchair, still abandoned, still broken, and he would be for the rest of his life. Years later, in the early 2000s, a journalist found Jhon in that facility and interviewed him about his time with Pablo Escobar, asked him if he regretted taking those bullets, if he'd do it again, knowing what he knew now. And Jhon's answer was brutally honest. I regret everything. I regret joining the cartel. I regret becoming Pablo's bodyguard. I regret believing that loyalty mattered to him. And yes, I regret taking those bullets. If I could go back to that moment, I would step aside and let them shoot Pablo. Let him die, because he deserved to die. Not for being a drug lord, not for the thousands of people he killed, but for what he did to people like me. People who were loyal to him. People who sacrificed for him. People who believed he cared about them. He didn't. He never did. We were all just tools to him. And when tools break, you throw them away. The journalist asked if Jhon ever received any compensation from Pablo's family after his death. Any acknowledgement of his sacrifice. Any help. Jhon laughed bitterly. Nothing. Maria Victoria and the kids fled Colombia. Took all the money they could carry. Never looked back. Never thought about the people who protected them, who'd sacrificed for them. I saved Pablo's life, and his family couldn't even send me a thank you note. That's the Escobar legacy. Take everything. Give nothing. Use people until they break, then forget they ever existed. Jhon died in 2008 at 46 years old. Still in that facility. Still in a wheelchair. Still bitter. Still broken. He'd spent 18 years paralyzed. 18 years living with the consequences of one moment of loyalty. And in all those years, no one from the Escobar family ever contacted him, ever thanked him, ever acknowledged that he'd taken 3 bullets to save Pablo's life. This story matters because it reveals the darkest truth about Pablo Escobar. Not that he was a drug lord. Not that he killed thousands. Everyone knows that. But that he was incapable of genuine loyalty, incapable of gratitude, incapable of seeing the people who serve him as anything more than tools. Jhon gave everything for Pablo, literally put his body between Pablo and bullets. And Pablo's response was to discard him like trash the moment he couldn't be useful anymore. People romanticize Pablo Escobar, make TV shows about him, talk about his loyalty to his family, his love for his children, his code of honor. But Jhon's story shows the truth. Pablo's loyalty extended exactly as far as his immediate family and stopped there. Everyone else was expendable. Everyone else was a tool. And when tools break, you don't fix them. You don't honor them. You don't take care of them. You throw them away and buy new ones. Jhon spent the last 18 years of his life wishing he'd made a different choice, wishing he'd stepped aside, wishing he'd let those bullets hit Pablo. Not because he wanted Pablo dead, though by the end he did, but because he wanted his legs back, wanted his life back, wanted the future that was stolen from him by a moment of misplaced loyalty to a man who didn't deserve it. That's the real legacy of Pablo Escobar, not the billions of dollars, not the power, not the legend, but the trail of broken people he left behind. People who were loyal to him, people who sacrificed for him, people who believed he cared about them, people like Jhon, who took bullets for a man who couldn't even be bothered to say thank you.